So that's it. That strike that was supposed to start today has been averted, at least from the eyes of the NLC. They're watching to see how things will go in the next 2 weeks, and we do hope we do not have to shut down the nation, because, of course, when we shut down the nation, it affects everyone, affects economic activities, and affects, I mean, even the rural, the executive, and everyone. So we do hope that that doesn't happen, that the CBN will indeed keep to its promise and word. But another aspect of that is the issue of eTransactions. We did see, of course, the volume hiked in the midst of all of this. In fact, the volume of eTransactions increased significantly in February, rising by 121% year on year. That's compared to February 2022. By 2023, eTransactions were up 121%. We're not surprised, because the cash wasn't there, so a lot of people turned to the electronic medium. And we saw also, I think about 40% of failure of those transactions. I'm almost sure everyone watching this program had an experience, or has had an experience when it comes to that. So, and yet we are still preaching the gospel of a cashless economy. That means that this electronic medium must work if we're going to have to be a cashless economy, which is the way of the world, which is the way of the future. And let's not forget that by 31st of December, the old notes will become illegal again, at least from the pronouncement, except there's an extension again. Those old notes will become illegal. What's going to happen then? Are we going to go back to the Supreme Court? Are we going to go back to the e-channels? Will they work better? What should banks and financial institutions be doing at this time to prepare themselves for that demand that most likely will come at the end of the year? We have Mr. Yele Okeremi, the Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems Limited, joining us to share his thoughts on that. Good morning, Mr. Okeremi. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I think you're muted, Mr. Okeremi. I cannot hear you, but I believe you work on that. Now, okay, so we did see the failure of a lot of e-transactions when the demand was really high. Some people have said this is because it was unexpected. The financial institutions were not prepared to handle such load, or maybe they underestimated the demand. What's your perspective? Why did we have such a high level of failure?
I mean, of course, pretty much there are several possible reasons. And I'll give my perspectives on that. So first of all, when we design systems, systems are designed for certain load, so to speak, certain expected volume, as it were. That's on one hand about the system design. Secondly, the pipe, the infrastructure that conveys data from the users or the customers up to the bank's servers. Those are also things that also have capacity. So essentially, when people are designing systems, and this is absolutely normal, we try to project what load we expect to carry. And sometimes we leave some room, you know, maybe 20-25% room for possibilities. But when things happen and then you suddenly find yourself having to carry load that's a lot beyond what you have scaled for, then you can have failures. So these are possibilities, both from the bank's end and also from even the infrastructure that carries the data. So these are the two possibilities that could have led to lots of failures, because if you looked at the time frame within which we were talking about trying to get so much to happen, I think the time frame may be a bit short for everybody to complete it too long.
So some people have said that Nigeria has been preaching the gospel of cashless economy for a couple of years now. Shouldn't the financial institutions, shouldn't they have been prepared? Wouldn't it have been better if they had excess capacity? And so now when the extra just came on, they would have been able to handle it.
And that's a smart reasoning. But I'll also tell you that, yes, Nigeria started talking about cashless. And if you look at it, it started very smartly. We started using a pilot scheme. We started from Lagos, cashless Lagos. And if you took a look at what happened during cashless Lagos, it was fairly successful. And we could have continued scaling that way. But, of course, many factors are involved whenever you want to do this kind of things. Remember, technology is just one factor. So when you have this kind of innovation or novation, so to speak, it sits on the tripod. You have the technical novation or innovation, as you may want to call it. You have the legislation or the laws or the rules that govern how things happen. And then thirdly, you also have the social impact. How do people respond and how much do people understand? So if you take a look at these three things, you realize that there are quite a lot of people also who had never used electronic banking prior to this forced usage that happened recently. And some of them also made mistakes. And some of the mistakes that even happened from the user side would have led to failures. But having said those, the honest truth is that while it sounds beautiful and nice to say, oh, we want to capacitize for the rainy day, it could be a lot expensive sometimes to just create capacity that's not being used, that's latent. And remember, in the world we live in today, technology advancement is so fast that sometimes if you just overcapacitize, it would just not necessarily cut it for you from a standpoint of return on investment. So what people do is, reasonable projections, looking at their businesses, how much growth are they expecting? Every bank or every company, every organization then capacitizes appropriately to that kind of scale. But of course, this that happened was a major jack, so to speak, in volume. Quite a number of the players were definitely not ready for this. And it turns out that getting ready for this kind of thing sometimes may not be a game of plug and play. Sometimes it may actually take major redesigns. And I speak from experience. Sometimes it may take major redesigns. And some of these things actually take time.
But how much of an impact the Jackpot syndrome play in this? Perhaps if we didn't have that huge, major exodus at a period of time, do you think the country would have escaped those failures in transactions?
Again, when we look at the conceptual model of these things, there are quite a number of factors, like you said, and you've got another factor, which we all call the Jackpot syndrome, which basically suggests that quite a reasonable number of skilled hands that understand the genesis and the design of some of these solutions are not in the system again. Definitely, that plays a very huge role in this thing. And I remember I told you that. So you have two issues. First is maintenance of what you even have. How do you even maintain it? And then second is your ability to expand. You see, the honest truth is that from an engineering standpoint, it's nearly impossible for you to expand something that you do not understand. So if you are going to expand something that's on ground, you need to have reasonable understanding of what is there. And then even to maintain what is there, you still need people that have reasonable depth and understanding of the solutions. And just like you said, Nigeria happened to quite a number of people, smart people particularly in tech and in the healthcare sector. Now it's happening in education. So I don't even know how many. It's beyond double, it's beyond triple, maybe triple one against the system. So you have the guys who could have used their hands and their heads, to try to uphold the system. A good number of them are not available in the system anymore, and then you are expecting a lot of influx, and yet you expect innovation. It's a lot of jeopardy in the society. Definitely, the lack of skilled hands was one of the major factors to this thing.
So looking forward now, when it comes to skills, isn't it possible to I mean, some of those skills that have left the country, can they not be employed remotely to handle some of this? Because when we look at how long it takes to train a skill to fill up, the former space, I think that's a longer route.
Now, listen, you see, when you look at certain things in business, if you take a look at the operational models of certain types of businesses, for example, if you run, some types of consultancies or probably training, it is probably easy to resource to order. What that means is, you don't really need to even, there are many people, many organizations, people that do sometimes even construction and stuff like that. They really don't have so many employees. But when they get projects, because the capacity, the kind of skill that they require is probably readily available, it's easy for them to resource to order. But if you talk about high tech, and you talk about particularly intellectual property business, resource to order doesn't cut it. Because remember I told you something. Even when you have the smartest programmers, when you have the smartest systems engineers, you also need to understand that you need the best of business analysts who can explain to them what the business processes are, what the reasons are, and not just the what, not just the how, but also the why. So these are things that, although some of them are documented, it will take time. So essentially, if you really wanted to do this kind of a thing, you need organizations that have a fairly stable compendium of skill staff. It's not easy for you to try to do the kind of things you are talking about and think that you can assemble an army just by making a few phone calls. And so if you take a look at organizations that are doing serious tech business, I was in a meeting with a friend of mine yesterday, and this was one of the things we were discussing. And we were discussing about some companies, and you hear software companies in other parts of the world that have 200,000 software engineers. And you're asking yourself, what are we actually doing here? They recruit 20,000 engineers every year because they're already building resilience. Now, but if you take a look at the reasons why some of these companies outside of Nigeria are able to achieve what they are achieving, of course, there are so many factors that are above my own pay grade. You have to look at even national risk factors, country risk factors. How many people want to live in certain countries? And how many people can you continue to trade in those countries? So essentially, if we want to take a look and unpack what you have said, it would require a lot more beyond just the banks. What would be required would be clear national strategies for ensuring that certain skills, and I'm not talking about tech alone, I mentioned tech. Tech is very essential, but so many fields that we think are important to our national development, we must necessarily have a national strategy that guarantees that we have a steady supply stream of skilled workers that can power and oil these things. Now, I'm going to say this once, and I hope it's fine now, that if we do anything short of that, we haven't started as a country.
All right, Mr. Yellow-Kiremi, we need a clear national strategy to deal with the issue of going on in the financial sector, eTransactions to be precise at this time. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts this morning. The Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems Limited.
You're welcome.
All right, it's AFEX time next, but that's after this break. It's still here on Business Morning on Channels Television.